All right, today we are diving into a really fascinating story. It's unfolding right now, kind of behind the scenes, in the high stakes world of science. It's all about a powerful new tool, yep, generative AI, and how it's quietly changing this huge, multi-billion-dollar process of deciding which scientific ideas get the green light and which ones, well, get left behind. And this brings up a huge question, one we're going to dig into today. Is this new technology really helping us push the boundaries of what we know? Or is it maybe, just maybe, nudging scientists towards ideas that are a little more conventional, a little less risky? Let's follow the data and see what we find. Now, to figure this out, we're not just going to guess. No, we are following the evidence from a brand new research paper that analyzed thousands, and I mean thousands, of real confidential grant proposals. These were submitted to America's top science funders, the National Science Foundation, the NSF, and the National Institutes of Health, the NIH. So every single year, billions of dollars of public money are on the line. This money funds the research that could lead to, the next life-saving drug or some piece of world-changing technology. It is an incredibly high-stakes world, and a powerful new tool has just walked onto the scene. I want you to think about the most important thing you've ever had to write. Maybe a college application? A cover letter for that dream job? Okay, now imagine that document literally determines whether you can even do your job for the next few years. That is the kind of pressure scientists are under every time they write one of these proposals. So, first things first. Step one in our investigation is pretty simple. Are scientists even using tools like ChatGPT to write these super important documents? And if so, how much? Well, researchers came up with a clever way to detect the little textual footprints that AI leaves behind. And honestly, the results were stunning. Just look at this timeline. Before late 2022, AI use was basically flat, pretty minimal. Then, on November 30th, ChatGPT goes public, and boom. What happens next is this massive, undeniable spike in adoption. The change was immediate, and it was dramatic. This chart right here makes that before and after picture totally crystal clear. We are not talking about a small little trend here. This is a massive shift in how scientists are actually approaching their work. But what's really fascinating is how it's being adopted. It's not like everyone is just dipping a toe in the water. The data shows what's called a bimodal distribution. All that means is that scientists are basically splitting into two separate camps, one group that uses AI a ton in their writing, and another that barely touches it at all. There's almost nobody in the middle. Okay, so we've nailed down that yes, a lot of scientists are using AI. So the next absolutely critical question is, what is this doing to the ideas themselves? Is the AI just a helpful assistant, a co-pilot, or is it actually grabbing the steering wheel? To measure this, the researchers used a concept called semantic distinctiveness. I know it sounds a little academic, but the idea is actually simple. It's just a way of measuring how different a new research idea is from stuff that's already been funded. The analogy here is perfect. Is the proposal basically a cover of a familiar pop song, or is it a completely new symphony? And wow, this chart just lays it all out. The data shows this incredibly clear and consistent pattern across both the NSF and the NIH. The more that AI is involved in writing a proposal, the less unique the core idea is. The proposals are all starting to cluster around the ideas that have already been successful. So let's just hammer this point home. Higher AI involvement is consistently, repeatedly linked with lower uniqueness. It really seems like AI might be creating a kind of echo chamber, pulling new ideas toward the safe, established center of science. It's making ideas more conventional. But this is where the story gets a really interesting twist. Okay, so we know AI-assisted proposals are less unique, more mainstream, but does that help or hurt their chances of actually getting the money? Well, as it turns out, the answer completely depends on who you're asking for the cash. And you can just see the incredible difference right here. At the National Science Foundation, using AI made no difference one way or the other in getting funded. But over at the National Institutes of Health, a totally different story. Higher AI use was linked to a 4 percentage point increase in the chance of getting funded. At the NIH, safer, more mainstream science was winning. And get this, the difference doesn't even stop once the check is cashed. For projects that got their money from the NSF, AI use had no link to how many papers they eventually published. But for those NIH projects, the AI-assisted grants went on to produce about 5% more publications. Okay, but here's the final crucial piece of the puzzle. What kind of papers are we talking about? The data shows this productivity boost at the NIH was all about the volume of papers, not necessarily their impact. There was no significant link between using AI and producing those hit papers, the top-cited, most groundbreaking research. So let's pull all these threads together. What is this whole investigation telling us about the trade-offs we're making as we weave AI into the very fabric of science? All right, let's do a quick recap. 1, AI use in grant writing just blew up after ChatGPT. 2, it's making our scientific ideas less unique, more mainstream. 3, at a major agency, the NIH, these safer ideas are actually more likely to be funded, and they produce more papers. But, and this is a big but, 4, that productivity boost doesn't seem to apply to the biggest, highest impact hit research. The researchers who uncovered all of this, they summed it up just perfectly with this quote. For an individual scientist who's just trying to get their work funded, yeah, using AI to write a more polished, conventional proposal might be a winning move. But for the scientific system as a whole, if everybody starts doing that, we could lose that incredible diversity of ideas that leads to the real breakthroughs. And that right there is the fundamental trade-off that this data has laid bare. We might be gaining some short-term efficiency for individual scientists, but it could come at the long-term cost of the collective creativity and the exploratory power of science itself. Which really just leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question. As we rely more and more on AI to help us think, we have to ask ourselves, who or what is really in charge of our next big idea?